You're listening to All In. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you fulfill the mission of God in your life and around the world. I'm your host, Jeff Roper. Exhaustion has become the new status symbol. You know, it used to be that we would say, I'm busy or I'm stressed. Well, those stopped being enough. Now we have to mix being busy with being stressed, which therefore we are exhausted. And the more exhausted you are, the more important you are, the more in demand you are, therefore the more worth you have. And so it seems to me in this society we live in today, everywhere I turn, people are using exhaustion as a status symbol. Now, I want to talk to you today about this whole issue of exhaustion, but before I do that, I do want to have one little caveat here, and that's that some of you are parents of young children, small children, and I hate to tell you this, you're just going to be exhausted for quite a while. I have a dear friend here in Athens that him and his wife, they recently had a baby, and every time I see Macus, my friend, he says, oh man, baby's up all night. We hardly ever get any sleep. And boy, I remember those days. I remember waking up from time to time and seeing Debbie over there not getting any sleep because she was caring for the baby. So I should say, with all honesty and full disclosure, my wife was very exhausted during the childhood days of our life, of our kids' life, but me not so much. I slept too much. But anyway, that's my own confession. Sorry about that, Debbie. Hope you've forgiven me. Each one of us have a physical requirement for sleep. And, you know, all the research that we're able to do says that it's between 7 and 9 hours of sleep per night. And from what I've been able to determine from research into this, doctors still don't necessarily know why we have to sleep and what all it does to us. They just know that we need it. Here's some interesting things that we discovered, and special thanks to Elizabeth, my podcast producer and daughter, who helped me put this information together. Listen to this. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which is a U.S.-based, for the U.S. government company, conservatively estimates that 100,000 police-reported crashes are the direct result of driver fatigue every single year. This results in 1,550 deaths, 71,000 injuries, and 12.5 billion, that's right, billion with a B, $12.5 billion in monetary losses, all because people are driving while they're fatigued, while they're tired. According to data from Australia, England, Finland, and other European nations, all of whom have a more consistent crash reporting procedures than in the United States, drowsy driving represents somewhere between 10 and 30% of all crashes. According to a study of the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, people who sleep 6 to 7 hours a night are twice as likely to be involved in such a crash as those sleeping 8 hours or more, while people sleeping less than 5 hours increase their risk 4 to 5 times. Now think about that. If you are sleeping 5 hours or less, you have 4 to 5 times more of a chance of being the cause of an automobile accident. All because you're not sleeping enough. Sleeplessness or lack of sleep increases mortality rate for those getting less than 7 hours of sleep. One study says that reduced sleep is a greater mortality risk than smoking, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Get that. Let me let that sink in. Sleep deprivation is a greater mortality risk than smoking, high blood pressure, and heart disease. It's also a contributing factor in obesity. Insufficient sleep is also associated with, because it's associated with lower levels of leptin, the hormone that helps the brain know that it's had enough food. If you're not sleeping enough, The leptin in your body is not able to tell you you've had enough, so it leads to overeating. It can contribute, sleeplessness can contribute to diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, breakdown in your immune system. And even research shows that you are more likely to engage in deviant behavior at work when you are tired. And exhaustion can lead to depression. Now, a shortage of rest will make you tired, cranky, hungry, and irritable, and dangerous behind the wheel. And for me, when I get tired, I get stupid. Now, we need to stop bragging about being tired and start confessing. We brag about things like this. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so busy. Oh, I'm exhausted. Now, you would never walk into a meeting at work and say, man, I'm so drunk. But sleep deprivation has the same effects on your functional capacity as being intoxicated does. And that's nothing to brag about. If you walk into a meeting completely tired and exhausted and you live this way every day of your life, you are functionally living like you're intoxicated all the time. And if we were to fire someone for showing up to work intoxicated, well, it's not because necessarily they were drinking, it's because they're showing up incapacitated for work. And yet we do allow the same thing. And in fact, we celebrate it. We've created culture, especially the U.S. culture, where exhaustion and overwork is celebrated as a virtue. And these things, my friends, should not be. I think it's time that we stop bragging and that we start confessing. We start confessing that we are violating God's principles of His created order, and we need to reestablish His order in our life. You have basic physical needs without which you will die, and they are in this order. The first thing you've got to have is air with oxygen in it. If you don't have that, you got about 3 minutes and you're toast. You're going to go meet your maker. Next thing that you need is heat. You need to, if you're out in the freezing cold, it's 40 below zero, 20 below zero, something like that. You will die pretty soon. It's going to mess you up really bad. Third thing that you need is sleep. After about 3 days without sleep, you will, I believe it's 3 days, you'll go insane. You'll go completely having a mental breakdown. The human body cannot go that long without sleep. You need water. You can make it several days without water, but you are in a state of dehydration. But you can actually go longer without water than you can without sleep. And then ultimately you need food. You need food. Starvation would set in for a normal person probably around 3 weeks. Some people can go a little bit longer, but if you're a normal, healthy person, you can actually, believe it or not, survive for up to 3 weeks without food. And of all of those, we all obviously know about air and heat, but the ones that we have some control over being sleep, water, and food, sleep is the one we most neglect, it seems, these days. See, I believe this, that if you regain rest in your life, you will regain the rest of your life. Getting control of your rest is critical to getting control of your life. You may not be under spiritual attack. You may not be on the verge of a mental or emotional breakdown. You may just need a nap. Now imagine someone buying a nice, beautiful, and very expensive BMW. The ultimate driving machine. And this car is stunning. Leather interior, beautiful, handcrafted material everywhere. It is a stunning, amazing automobile. And this person buys it, and within just a few years, 2 or 3 years, they've completely destroyed it because they've misused it and neglected it. They used it for stuff it wasn't intended for. That's a BMW. It's not an off-road pickup truck. You don't take it like that. Don't treat it like that. It needs to be maintained. It needs to have the tires rotated. It needs to have the engine serviced. It needs specific things done to it because that machine needs maintenance in order for you to utilize it for what it was created for. And we have all sorts of names for people that would take a valuable car like that and completely destroy it through neglect and misuse. Yet we don't think the same way about our own bodies. This body is far greater design than a BMW or a Mercedes, or pick your favorite car, Ford, Chevy, Lada, whatever is your favorite automobile. The human body is fearfully and wonderfully made, designed by its creator to do certain things, to accomplish certain things, and to need certain things for its maintenance and its thriving and for its vitality. And sleep is one of those. Now, you may be in a complete state of exhaustion right now, and you need to do some triage. So today, if this is you, especially as I'm recording this, it's early December 2015, and so we're in the holiday season, and it can be a very busy time. And what I really don't want to see happen in your life or in mine is that in the busyness of this season that we actually miss the season. We're so hectic in trying to keep up with everything that's happening that we don't have the time to be present in the moment that we're living. And a lot of that is caused by exhaustion. You know what it's like. You'll have your Christmas meal and you end up with a food coma. The turkey starts doing its magic on you, and you end up over on the couch or the lazy boy watching football and taking a food coma nap. Well, that is in part because of the food coma, but I think sometimes in part to the fact that you're exhausted just from the season. But if you are tired right now, just go. You might need to take a break somewhere today. Take a 10, 15-minute break. Get out of your office, out of wherever you are at, and go for a walk. Go sit down. Go just spend some time doing nothing. Don't check email. Get off of Facebook. Don't do anything. Just take a break and have 5, 10, 15 minutes of silence, of a break, just to breathe deep. Breathe deep, breathe out, just to catch your breath. You may need to take a nap today. That's always a good thing. My wife and I, we always had this little running teaser. She always figured if I was napping, I was wasting time because there was stuff I should be doing. And I told her napping is doing something. And so I don't take naps very often anymore, though all the medical evidence is showing that there are incredible health benefits to taking a 15 to 20 minute nap every day, and maybe I'll get that going again. But maybe you, in your triage at the moment, you need to take a nap. And you should also limit your connectivity. I was talking earlier about parents with small kids, and you remember what it's like, or you know what it's like because you're living it right now. Every time you're trying to do something, it seems like you've got one of your little ones there at your leg. Mama, 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 daddy, 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 and they're just patting. They're trying to get. Especially when you're trying to do something. If you're trying to actually have a conversation with someone that's taller than 3 feet, and you're trying to have an adult conversation with someone, and boy, they come, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And that's very normal for kids, but boy, being connected to the internet, it's like you got 1,000 of those people now, all saying, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. Hey, look at my post, look at my tweet, look at this, look at that, look at my status, look at this, look at this. And it's constantly connected to you and placing demands on you. And those demands pull energy out of you. They pull your emotional and mental energy out of you. So it's good for you to limit your connectivity, and especially in the evening. Just get off of Facebook and don't do emails and all of that stuff. Just limit your connectivity, and maybe you do need just to go to bed early. So you know what, I need this. This is a physical need of mine, and go to bed early. That's some triage, but triage is only meant for emergency situations. I would rather take the next step and go into some life-changing, life-altering choices that we build into our lifestyle. And the first one I'd like to share, I'm going to share 7 of them with you. The first life-changing choice is you got to identify your identity. And here's what I mean by that. In the hustle and bustle and the busyness of our culture that ends up producing exhaustion, sleep deprivation, this is a tactic that is used to gain control, emotional and mental control over hostages. And some of us have fallen hostage to the whims and waves and the mindsets of this age. And we're not even aware of it because we've been sleep deprived, and our mind and our spirit and our soul are not functioning at full capacity. And one of the first steps in regaining control of your life really is to regain control of your mental situation, which you need to be well rested for that. Sleep deprivation is used to control your mind. And right now we're caught up between this dynamic of trying to understand all the doing that we have to do versus all the being that we need to be. And the first choice you need to do is identify your identity as what do you want to do, but who do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? Settling yourself down enough to be able to hear that and to pray it through, to talk it through with the Lord and within your own self as well, to say, what kind of person do I want to be? And then out of that is what you choose to do. That your doing always should flow from your being. Second life choice is to renew your mind. I want to recommend 4 books that have been life transforming for me. One is a classic called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I think it was written back could have been the 80s, could have been the early 90s. It's all kind of a blur to me. My kids were young back then, so that part of my life is a blur. But I read that book, and it was transformative. Highly recommend it. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Next book that is very good is called Getting Things Done by David Allen. And here's how I would distinguish the two. The 7 Habits taught me what I should do. Getting Things Done teaches me how I can do it. So get those two. The third one that I would recommend is a book called Essentialism. Essentialism. I'll include links in the show notes to these books. And the fourth book is called The One Thing. Those are 2 newer books, and perhaps you've read those, but they are great, and I would highly recommend them. And as part of renewing your mind, because you've got a way of thinking, I've got a way of thinking that has constructed the way that we act, and we believe that busyness and sleep deprivation is normal and the way that we should be. In fact, I remember wasn't too long ago, I was in a city in Spain, and I was sitting around the table with some leaders from around the world, and we had, European, Asian, American, number of leaders from around the world sitting around the table, just having a meal, and somehow we got into the subject of how much do we sleep at night. And this was about a year ago, and each one of us were basically saying we get about 5 hours of sleep every day. And that was kind of the norm around the table. And it was about that same time that I was beginning to realize just how devastating this was in my own life, and that I was going to have to overcome this and start implementing some changes into my life. And so some of these books were helpful in it. There were a number of other books that I've read and podcasts that I've listened to that have helped me get victory in this. And I really do mean it as a victory, because I've had a very long struggle in my own life with getting adequate sleep, that it was always seemed to be, 5 hours would be about the norm. And so I'm talking to you as one who's a recent convert. But hey, renew your mind. Third choice is that less is more. And boy, this is hard. When you suffer from FOMO, which is fear of missing out, you want to be involved in everything, you want to do everything, you want to say yes to every opportunity that comes around. But then you realize you can't do everything, but you do need to do the right thing. And it's better to do a few things with excellence than it is a lot of things with average or incompetence. So less is more. Reducing your life, going into an essentialist way of thinking, a way of living. That, do you really need all of that? Do you really need to do all of those other things? Less is more. Number 4 is define your boundaries in this season of life. Now, this is important. I mentioned earlier to those of you that are parents of young kids, you don't have a lot of free time. You might hear somebody talk about, oh, you need to have morning devotion times where you set aside an hour or something, or you need to have an hour of exercise, etc. And you just feel like, dear Jesus, if I had 3 minutes to go to the bathroom by myself, I would be happy. Well, we understand. I get it. That's your life. And you have to set a boundary for wherever you are at in the season of your life right now. I have a different season of my life, so my boundaries are going to look different. My boundaries won't look like your boundaries. Your boundaries won't look like mine. You have to decide with the wisdom that God has endowed you with, and understanding yourself, your personal needs, your psychological, emotional, spiritual needs and responsibilities. What are the boundaries that you're going to establish in your life? Boundaries for how much you're going to work. Boundaries for how much sleep you're going to need. Boundaries for your lifestyle, your exercise, your diet, etc. You have to define the boundaries for this season of your life. The 5th choice is to establish restorative practices. Now, these restorative practices go everything from sleep, and this could be very practical, folks, like setting a bedtime. Maybe you need to go to bed at 10 o'clock instead of midnight. Maybe you need to go to bed at a different time than what you're doing. You could limit the stimulants, all stimulants, both chemical and technological stimulants. I know for myself, I was a long time heavy duty coffee drinker, and several years ago I figured I can't drink coffee past about 2 p.m. And if I drink it later than that, man, it just messes me up for the rest of the day. And so I've cut it out. Technological stimulation as well. Boy, I tell you, when I'm done with the day and I put my phone in the charger, and I'm separated from it. I don't sleep in the bed with my phone. I don't have it around me at night because it becomes a stimulant, and it doesn't allow my body to go into the sleep mode that it needs. And it could be something practical for you as well, like getting blackout shades. It's one of the things that's really nice about hotel rooms. And I'm in a hotel somewhere every week. And it is the nice thing about hotels is they have those blackout shades that make it completely dark. And then one other little tool that I personally use is I have a white noise program that I've downloaded onto my computer. I bought it from iTunes. It's just sounds of nature, running water, rain, stuff like that just runs in the background while I'm sleeping, so that even though I may be in 2 or 3 different cities in the course of a week, it always sounds like I'm sleeping in the same place because it's dark and I've got the same noise in the background. I'm not having to listen to the cats, the dogs, the trucks, the call to prayer when I'm in Muslim-dominant areas. All of those things that happen during the course of the night, I have the same noise playing in the background. That helps me. Anyway, getting your sleep and those restorative practices, maybe some daily rituals of your morning prayer time, and how do you spend time meditating in the scriptures? How do you spend time journaling? Taking a weekly Sabbath is another restorative practice. And for me, this involves as well the technological aspect that I don't email. I try to set aside those 24 hours, no email, no Facebook, none of that stuff for the Sabbath day. That's a day of rest, and those are all tools I use to be connected and working, and I just choose to be apart from them, and I find it to be restorative. And then seasonal and annual restorative practices, everything from vacation times to taking an occasional sabbatical or extended time of prayer and reflection. All of those become things that restore. Number six choice, life-changing choice is exercise. You've heard me talk some about this in this podcast about the importance of exercise. That like trying to get enough sleep, getting enough exercise. I'm a latecomer to that. I think I just started running about 4 years ago. But whether it's doing brisk walks or running, hey, let me recommend one more time this book called Born to Run. Changed my life. Love that book. Great story and life-changing stuff that I learned from it. Anyway, check it out. Born to Run. Christopher McDougall. Running, it could be biking. I used to do a lot of mountain biking, but my lifestyle is such anymore that it just doesn't fit as something that I can do on a regular basis because I'm traveling all the time and it's kind of hard to carry my bike with me. But you could do biking, you could do cross training, weight training, yoga, anything that gets your body's the adrenaline flowing and the heart rate up. This is good for your rest. And then finally, the seventh decision, life-changing decision, is the decision of your diet. Now, when I say diet, I'm not talking about something that you engage in for a period of time to lose weight. I'm talking about a lifestyle you engage in to gain health. But I also realize there are three things you should never talk about in a social setting, and these are politics, religion, and diet. Man, I tell you, as soon as you start talking about what kind of food you should and shouldn't eat, man, the claws come out. People go ballistic, whether it's the paleo or the high carb or the low sugar, the low, whatever it is, man, people just go religious, go crazy on it. So whatever your view of diet is, don't send me hate mail. Don't send me stuff about it. But just let me say, diet is important. And, I was talking to a friend of mine one time. We were talking about how important our diet is and how it affects our health, with inflammation, how it affects everything. And, we don't apply the same logic to ourselves that we apply to our dogs. If you had a nice 3-year-old Labrador Retriever and the dog was in terrible health, the first thing you'd ask the owner is, what are you feeding this dog? Yet when we look at our own lives and how they break down and all of the problems that we have, we've never really asked ourselves, geez, what am I eating that might be causing this? We just go to the doctor and say, hey, do you have a pill that can help me overcome this or help me overcome that? Well, let me just give you a couple of pointers on this without stirring the rat's nest too much. Obviously, I think we can all agree that we should drink lots of water. I think that's something we don't have to argue about. I don't believe there is a one-size-fits-all for people about what they should and shouldn't eat. I have a particular lifestyle of no sugars, no grains that I generally try to live by. I'm not religious about it. I don't flip out. If I'm a guest in somebody's home or something and they give me food and it's got sugars and grains in it, I'll of course eat it with some moderation because you got to put life into your living. But when I have control over what I eat, I normally don't eat sugars. I don't normally eat grains. But I think every person's got to find their own path in that. A couple of books that helped me in this regard were a book called Grain Brain, outstanding book. And then the second one that was very helpful to me as well was called Wheat Belly. And I don't know if there was any correlation or partnership between these two different doctors who wrote these books, but I thought it was great. Grain Brain and Wheat Belly. Anyway, two very good books I would highly recommend. Well, hey, if you embrace this rest that I'm talking about, I want to tell you there are 5 things I believe that will happen in your life, and I've seen it in my own life. The first thing is you'll make better decisions. When I have to travel on the long trip, by a long trip I mean that I'm going to have to change my internal clock by 8 to 11 or 12 hours. That I've changed that many time zones in a particular flight, which happens on a regular basis for me. I kind of have this running rule that I make no major decision in the first 24 hours because I know my brain is fried. But when you are well rested, you make better decisions. Second thing is that you'll live a healthier and longer life. That's right. Third benefit that you'll get is you'll be more helpful to others. The fourth benefit you'll get is you'll be more enjoyable to be around. Hey, who wants to be around a tired, cranky old man? Nobody does. So I try to get more rest so I'm not the tired, cranky old man that I used to be. And the fifth benefit that you will gain from embracing rest is that you will be present in your own life. When you're constantly hurried and constantly exhausted, you're never present for the amazing things that are happening in your life. And as I say at the end of every podcast, it's your life, now go live it. Hey, it is your life. And I want you to be there for it when it's happening. Because ultimately, as priests of the Lord, each one of us that are a living priest unto the Lord in the Old Testament, there was this unique instruction that God gave to the priest, that he was to wear a particular type of garment so that he would not sweat. And the indication was that he was to be ministering out of a place of rest and peace, that ultimately the work is the Lord's. And it says in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 1, that therefore, while the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us fear lest any of you should seem to have failed to reach it. That even though this is talking about a rest in the finished work of Christ, there's a practical application as well, that there is a place of rest that stands for each one of us. And I want you, my dear friend, my dear listener, to have a life full of rest, full of goodness, full of wisdom. And I don't want you to be one like me who, when you are tired, you are stupid.
Well, we're done now. Thanks for listening. This is Jeff Roper reminding you that the mission of God is too grand for mediocrity or average living. You were created for a purpose, and that purpose is found in the mission of God. It's your life. Now go live it.